should you buy the DJI RS3 or the Zhiyun Weebill 3? Now this actually packs a bit more when it comes to features, but if you had to ask me which one of these would I buy, I shoot a lot of weddings and real estate. Real estate, I'm using a gimbal pretty much for the entire video, and for weddings, it's probably 80% of the day. So I know a good gimbal when they come along, I have to use them a lot, I know what works and what doesn't work. Right up front, both of these gimbals do what they're designed to do very well, which is to get stable shots, basically. Can't fault either of these in any way. They both do a solid job. The first thing that stood out to me when I put my hands on this literally is the fact that the grip is too small. Compared to the RS3, that grip is not big enough, it's not comfortable to use compared to the RS3. The other thing that was immediately evident to me was that this uses its own proprietary plate, which is their plate on the top here. You could attach your own base plate to that if you wanted to, but then you run the risk of making it a little bit higher, potentially becoming too top heavy, and then harder to balance. So you have to use their own proprietary quick release plate, which does slide onto this plate right here. It's not the easiest in the world to do compared to the RS3. Case in point, then you push it forwards and then you lock it in and it's now balanced, providing it was balanced before you took it off. Now the DJI Plate is their own as well. It allows you to attach things to it like a focus motor, but it is actually Arca Swiss. So if I take that off, I can attach this to just a basic Arca Swiss plate there with no issue whatsoever, and then that can go on a tripod or whatever else I want to use. Proprietary plates aren't a great thing if you want to have a system that just allows you to go from one thing to another quickly and easily. Now Zhiyun made this a little bit more simple. They went back to basics, but there's some odd design choices in here. For example, this right here, this kind of looks like a stand, doesn't it? But if you... It's not actually a stand. It will work, but it is not the most sturdy thing in the world. So you do have to use legs there, which of course you have to use with the Ronin RS3 there as well. If you didn't have the legs on there, that definitely wouldn't stand up. But that just is an odd design choice. If you want to make it look like a stand, actually make it function like a stand. Could just be my personal opinion, but that's how I look at it anyway. This is good for whether you're left-handed or right-handed. This, with the grip being smaller, is actually designed more for a right-handed person. Why? Well, you see that little bit just there? When you grip it, your thumb kind of rests just under there, which is good for a little bit of support. If you're left-handed, you can't do anything because you've got no control there. The other thing with that is if you're forced to use your right hand, it now means you have to use your left hand to hit the record button on the top of the camera. Now most record buttons, at least with Sony, are on the right side. So that's kind of a pain in the ass to have to put your hand over the top there and do that. And I know what you're thinking, well Chris, there's a record button right there. You're right, there is. You have to tether it with a cable. And I'm past that now because the RS3 has taught me that you don't need that because this has Bluetooth recording control. I can hit the record button on this and it triggers record on the camera wirelessly over Bluetooth. This has to use a cable. And that is a feature that I use so much now. Didn't think I'd appreciate it as much as I did, but I do. I don't want to have to go back to using a cable. Hello, if you like this video so far, maybe try subscribing. The button down below there's no contract with that. You can always unsubscribe in the future when you decide you hate me after watching the next video. Back to the video. Now, if you use gimbals at different locations, you know that when you're moving around, you want to kind of lock it all off so that it's safe to travel with. This is on right now. Let's turn this off and show you how quick it is to lock up. Okay, so it's off, lock that, and lock that. That's how quick it is to do with the Weebill 3. Same thing with the RS3, it's on right now. Let's turn it off. That's it, it's done. It's ready to travel with. Which one of those do you think is quicker? In terms of weight, 2.2 pounds, 2 pounds, so 0.2 pound difference. When it comes to battery life, the RS3 has 12 hours of built-in battery life included in the handle, which is the battery. You can actually take this off. You can unlock it, swap it out for another one if you needed a bit more power on a day. This actually has a much more impressive 21 hours of battery life. Did I get to test that? No, because that's a lot of gimbal use. I will tell you, using this for a real estate shoot for an hour when this was fully charged, looking at the battery again right now, it still says it's fully charged. With that said, this actually has a real-time indication in terms of a percentage of what is left. This just has your little battery bars. No, I don't personally use these, but bags. This is what comes with the RS3. It's a little kind of hard case, covered in dog hair right now. I don't really ever fold my gimbal up to put it in here, so I don't use that. I don't get the case that comes with the Zhiyun Weebill 3 though. This looks like something you'd put a sleeping bag in. I don't know what you would do with that. And that's what happens if you forget to unlock it because you get so used to dealing with the auto locks. So with the RS3, I can just tap the lock button and now it's still on and I can just tap it again and it unlocks and it's ready to go. But that puts it into sleep mode, turns off the motors. haven't figured out the sleep mode on this. The triggers both feel fine. It's a bit more spongy on the Weebill 3. The RS3 has more of a click to it. I will say that the trigger placement on the RS3 has trained my mind to just go right here. And if I do the same on the Weebill 3, that actually takes me to the dial, which I currently have set to change my horizontal axes. So yeah, I'm constantly doing that, but that's probably just because I'm used to dealing with the RS3. They're reversed between each gimbal. So in terms of what these gimbals can actually fly, and what I mean by that is what it can balance, the Weebill actually doesn't advertise it, and I do respect that because the RS3 has an on-paper weight of 6.6 pounds, but if you have something that's really top-heavy on here, like a big mic, you're not gonna be able to get 6.6 pounds on it. So it actually makes a lot of sense to not advertise the weight that you can fly on these gimbals. Both these gimbals have all the modes you would expect: pan follow, POV mode, vortex mode, 360 roll mode, I think they call it on the RS3. I do like that the RS3 has the physical switch so you can quickly glance and see what mode you're actually in and change it easily. On the Weebill, you've gone back to the push the M button like the original Ronin had, and then it shows you on the screen there which mode that you're actually in. All the modes work great, don't have any issues with those. This is where it gets kind of interesting because it's almost like Zhiyun sat down and said, what can we fix on this gimbal that we really don't need to fix? And that's exactly what they did. They put a mic on there. Came across Sam Holland's video and he tested it, and I'll show you a clip of that now.
This is the built-in microphone with the Weebill. This is what it sounds like.
You're probably not gonna wanna use that mic. It also has a light on it. You get to that by clicking and holding the little dial on the side there, and it's pretty powerful. It goes up to 1,000 lumens. Adjust the brightness by turning the dial down. That's the minimum it goes at 10%, and that's 100%. You can also change the color temperature. It goes from 5400, not 56, 5400, down to 2600. So if you need to change the color temperature of that, as you can. One thing I did notice with this light is because it's on the side here, if you have a lens that zooms in, you're gonna get this shadow going across because, I mean, it's on the one side. If it's a lens that doesn't have a really long barrel on it, then you'll be okay, but that's something to think about with the light. To be honest with you, that's a gimmicky feature that I don't ever see myself using. Maybe if you want to vlog with it, I don't know, and it's nighttime or it's dark, but I wouldn't ever see myself using that light. You see what I mean by it has more features, but it's not really anything you technically need. The problems that have been fixed by putting in a mic and a light is a problem that didn't exist in the first place. In terms of interface, DJI has really nailed it with the little touchscreen now. Very easy to navigate. Everything is exactly where you'd think it would be. Zhiyun went back to a little tiny 0.9-inch touchscreen, and everything is controlled with the little dial on the side here. And you click it, and then you scroll around up and down, left and right, and then you click it again to confirm what it is you want to change. So it does make it a little bit more time consuming, and you have to get used to it. Once you get used to it, it's fine, but it's definitely more time consuming to use and change things around. Now, it's important that you calibrate your gimbal properly every time you change the setup that you're using, so the motors are putting out the power that they need to put out to control it properly and make it function right. On the RS3, they've put that in a really smart place. Top left there, tap that, hit start calibration, you're good to go. It's buried in the menus a little bit on the Weebill, and if you go on menu and then tap motor, auto, it will auto tune. So it's still pretty easy to find once you've found it. However, I don't know why. I'll show you again. Menu, motor, auto, auto tune. What was that? It's not even doing anything. I think the gimbal froze. I didn't know the gimbal could freeze. Hello? All right, let's turn it off and turn it back on. Back on. All right, let's try again. So menu, motor, auto, auto tune. Oh, now it's working. So you can see that it is a little bit temperamental and it doesn't seem to work as well as the RS3's auto tune for calibration. In terms of the settings I have for the RS3 and what I use for very smooth shots for real estate, for weddings, very subtle movements, nothing too jarring or fast, it's just very smooth. These are the settings that I use for that, so you can pause this and come back to it or screenshot or whatever. To do the same with the Weebill 3, it took me a lot longer to figure out the settings I should be using and changing to get it to the same as the RS3, but I did, and here they are. The biggest thing I can tell you is have deadband set properly. Now, deadband is how much you can actually move the gimbal before it responds to your movement. So you can see with the RS3 here, if I turn it, it actually doesn't really turn the gimbal. I have to turn it quite substantially. That is a setting you really want to play around with to figure out properly how you like your setup. I like very smooth movements, and the muscle memory in my arms gets to a point now where I just know how much to turn them to get the movement I want. Deadband is the key to smooth movements with your gimbal. When it comes to balancing both of these gimbals, they both balance exactly how you'd think. There is a couple of little differences to bear in mind here, and then you can obviously lock them so you can balance the axes that you need to as and when you get to that one. Something the RS3 has, and the RS3 Pro now, is the little dial on here. So when you are balancing for this axis right here, it's really easy to just get those little fine adjustments. So you can see right now it's a little off balance, but I can just turn this and it moves the whole camera forward. So you can really get those minute adjustments to exactly how you need it to be, and then just lock it off and you're good to go. With the Weebill 3, you don't have that. You've got the more traditional way of doing it, which is fine, it's how we're used to, but that is a better system. You have to slide this plate forwards and backwards there. So it's a lot harder to get those little tiny adjustments, and it's really just on you to figure out how to make it the smallest adjustment that you can make it so it actually balances. So from a user experience point of view, when it comes to actually balancing both of these, it's definitely faster to balance the RS3 than it is to balance the Weebill, because that dial is just, it's easier to use. With your horizontal axes as well here, you actually balance it on the Ronin by unlocking that lever there, and then you can push this in or out to balance it. I've got mine really tight, so it's off balance there. If I push it back, it'll balance it back the other way. That's how you do it on the Ronin. On the Weebill, it's actually done with, it's gonna be really hard for me to show you, but it's actually done with, there's a little lock right here, and you unlock that, and then you can slide it left and right that way. So a little bit different. I will say that having 3 separate locks, one there, and one there, does make it a little bit tight in here. So I would actually prefer to have my axes for going this way on the back here like it is on the RS3, but that's just my personal preference. In terms of price for these gimbals, the RS3 comes in at $549 with this exact setup right here and this additional handle that comes with it in the case that I said earlier. It actually clips on the little NATO rails on the side there. That is fully adjustable in terms of angle, pitch of how you like to use it as well. That's good for your underslung mode, obviously. The Weebill 3 is actually a little bit cheaper, coming in at $449. However, that doesn't get you this, which we'll talk about in a second, and this handle, which is adjustable, and it can go up and down there if you wanted to. So if you want to get those 2 things included in the kit, it then comes to $529, which pretty much puts it on par with the Ronin RS3. Now, this little wrist thing here, in theory, is a good idea, because when you're holding a gimbal, you hold it like this. And that there is designed to support your wrist. But it just kind of gets in the way more than anything else there. There's a soft little bit of foam there, which is meant to be sort of like padding. But to be honest with you, I don't think you'll end up using that. You really won't. With that said, I actually found an easier way to hold it, which was on the legs there, and you use this base as almost like a support for your hand. Shot a real estate thing for an hour with that, and it seemed to be better to hold it like that than it did to hold it on this little tiny grip right here. So if you want to not bother with those things, save yourself some money, and then you don't have to get them, because you won't really use that. It's not, again, solving a problem that didn't really need to be solved. On top of that, I actually then thought, well, you know what? These are rosettes. Well, this is attached with rosettes. So maybe you could just put your own handle on there instead. You can't, because this is a typical rosette. If I try and screw it on, which you could then attach a handle to, it's not deep enough. The 1/4 inch 20 thread is too shallow. So you actually can't put any other like actual rosette things on there. So here's another one, look. Screw this in. You'll see. That's as far as it screws in. So it doesn't actually, it's not technically what it says it is. So that's something to bear in mind too. If you thought, oh, I'll just put my own handles on there and grip it that way. You can't. So which of these gimbals should you buy? Well, it's an easy decision for me. I would go with the RS3. The auto locks, the bigger touchscreen on there, the bigger handle, the fact that it just is an easier, more travel-friendly gimbal for going between locations. The Weebill is just, there's some weird design quirks in there which I don't really understand. That might be for you, in which case, great. There'll be links for both down below, but in my opinion, for someone that actually uses gimbals a lot, that is a gimbal designed for people who use gimbals. That is a gimbal for, I don't know who that's for.